My name is Laya. I'm 15 now, but for as long as I can remember, I've carried a warning in the back of my mind like a whisper I couldn't forget. It came from my mother, never loud, never fully explained, but always there. Don't go near that man, ever. She meant Camila's dad. When I was younger, I didn't understand. He was just another adult in the neighborhood, another polite smile at school pickup, another face in the crowd. The way my mother spoke of him, though, it was different. She didn't say he was dangerous. She didn't call the police. She didn't forbid me to play with Camila outright. But every time she saw him at the grocery store or across the street, her jaw would tighten. Her hand would grip mine a little harder and she'd walk faster. Stay away from him, Laya. Just trust me. But that was all she ever said. No story, no details. Just fear I wasn't supposed to get close. But Camila moved into our neighborhood when we were both 9, and something about her just clicked with me instantly. We became friends, fast, unbreakable, really. She was kind, funny, always the first to help when I forgot my homework or needed a partner in gym class. And more than anything, she made me feel seen. We were both only children, both raised by single moms, both used to navigating adult silences with quiet smiles by the time we were 13. We were spending every weekend together, sleepovers, shared playlists, late-night confessions about school and crushes, and what we'd do when we turned 16. Camila's house became my second home. Her mom worked nights, so most of the time it was just the two of us, and sometimes her dad, Mr. Ribeiro, he was the kind of man who made adults trust him quickly. Charming in a quiet way, clean-cut, good job, always dressed well, always sang just the right thing. Around other people, he smiled a lot, said things like, "Smart girls like you two will rule the world someday." He never yelled, never made us feel scared. And yet, something about him always felt too polished. Like the smile never quite reached his eyes. I ignored the feeling. I had to, because admitting something was off meant accepting that my mother might have been right. And I didn't want that I wanted Camila. I wanted our friendship. I wanted to believe that sometimes moms just overreact, but the warnings never stopped. Every time I mentioned Camila's house, my mother would change the subject. If she saw me coming out of their driveway, her eyes would darken. One night, I came home 5 minutes late from a sleepover and found her pacing the kitchen, hands trembling. "I don't want you over there anymore," she said suddenly. "From now on, she can come here." "Why?" I asked. "What did he ever do?" She didn't answer. She just sat down, wiped her face like she was tired, and whispered, "Some things are better left buried." I should have asked more questions, but at 15, I didn't want mysteries. I wanted my life to stay simple. I didn't want to lose my best friend over some vague, paranoid fear from the past. So I did what most teens do. I lied. I told my mom I was studying at the library. I told her Camila was coming to my house when we were really going to hers. I kept the secret alive because I didn't want the truth. Not yet, but the cracks were already forming. The more time I spent at Camila's house, the more I noticed how little she actually knew about her father's past. She once told me he used to be in business somewhere else, but didn't like to talk about it. She said he moved them to our city to start fresh. When I asked about old photos, she said there weren't any. My mom says we lost everything in a flood. She'd shrug. And somehow that never sat right. Still, I didn't push. Camila trusted him. That was all that mattered, until the day we found the box. But that's for later. All I knew then was this. My best friend's father was the one person in my world who came with a warning label. And yet he was everywhere, smiling, laughing, pretending, while my mother stayed quiet, hoping I'd just obey out of instinct. But I didn't. And eventually, I'd regret that more than anything, because her silence wasn't fear. It was trauma, and once I started peeling back the layers of what she never said, I realized this story didn't begin with me, it began with her. If fear was supposed to keep me away from Camila's house, it failed miserably. The warnings, the glances, the tension in my mother's voice, they all blurred behind the comfort I found in our friendship. Camila was my anchor in a school where I felt adrift, a place where girls measured each other by clothes and popularity, and I never quite made the list. She made me feel like I didn't have to perform, like I didn't need to change. She listened without interrupting and never judged the way I always bit my nails or preferred reading over parties. She made me feel like I mattered, so I clung to that. I justified it in my head. Whatever my mom had against Mr. Ribeiro, it couldn't be that. Serious. Not if Camila trusted him. Not if the house was filled with warmth and music and the scent of cinnamon from her dad's weekend pancakes. Not if I was laughing so hard on her bedroom floor that I forgot all about my own worries. But even in the laughter, there were moments. Moments that didn't quite fit, like the time Mr. Ribeiro entered the room without knocking. We were trying on dresses for a school dance, giggling, comparing looks in front of the mirror. He stepped in without warning, eyes flicking from me to Camila with a smirk. "You girls look older than 15, he said slowly. Before tossing her a new pair of shoes and walking out, Camila laughed it off. "He's always like that," she shrugged. "Just ignore him." Or the time I found him watching us from the hallway, just standing there silently. When I caught his eyes, he didn't look away, just tilted his head like he was curious, and then turned, calm as ever, back into the kitchen. But I still stayed. I still slept over. I still laughed and danced and told Camila my secrets because she felt like home. She never said anything bad about her father. She always seemed happy. And part of me started to believe that maybe my mother's fear wasn't mine to carry, except she carried it for both of us. She never questioned my stories about Camila, but she watched me more closely. She asked more specific questions. What time did her dad get home? Did I ever see him drink? Did he ask questions about me? And every time I lied, even just a little, I could feel something fracture between us. I was trading her trust for silence. Camila and I got closer than sisters. She told me things she didn't even tell her mom. That she hated wearing dresses because her dad always commented on them. That she didn't feel safe going to sleep unless her bedroom door was locked. That sometimes she pretended to be asleep just so she wouldn't have to talk to him. She said it with a laugh, like it was normal and maybe for her. It was one night we were lying under a blanket fort in her room, whispering stories like we used to do as little kids. She suddenly turned to me and asked, "Do you think parents ever lied to protect us?" The question hit hard, because I'd been wondering the same thing. I thought about my mother, about the tightness in her voice, the things she never said. And I thought about Camila's father, how his eyes sometimes lingered too long, how his hands would land on her shoulder a little too casually, how he seemed to be everywhere at once without ever being truly present. "Maybe," I said. She nodded. Quietly, "Yeah, me too." Neither of us said anything else that night, but after that, I started watching more closely. I started noticing the silences between Camila and her dad, the way she tensed when he entered a room, the way she stopped mid-sentence if he walked by, the way her voice changed when he called her name. I started realizing that maybe her smiles were practiced, that maybe, just maybe, she was protecting him, and she didn't even know why the friendship grew, but so did the unease. We were closer than ever, yet something felt wrong beneath the surface. Like a painting with cracks hidden under the frame, and I was scared to touch it, because once you look too closely, you can't unsee the truth, and the truth was coming. We just didn't know how close it already was. It happened on a Sunday afternoon, the kind of quiet, sleepy day where everything feels just a little too still. Camila's mom had taken the car for errands, and her dad was napping in his room. We had the house to ourselves, or so we thought. We were cleaning our closet for a school donation drive, tossing old notebooks, clothes that didn't fit, random birthday cards when Camila's hand brushed against something wedged deep behind a pile of blankets. A worn shoebox, duct taped shut. She looked at it like it wasn't supposed to be there. "I didn't put this here," she said quietly. I remember the way her fingers hesitated at the tape. I should have told her to leave it. I should have said, "Let's go downstairs," but I didn't. I just watched as she peeled it open and everything changed. Inside there were photos. Dozens of them. Some were old, grainy Polaroids. Others looked recent. None of them were labeled, but they didn't need to be. We knew what we were looking at. Girls, not women. Not adults. Girls, teenagers, some posed like they were modeling. Some looked like they didn't know they were being photographed. And in the background, always there, always looming, was her father, smiling, standing too close. Camila's hands started to shake. She dropped the box, spilling its contents across the carpet. There were other things, too, a silver bracelet. That wasn't hers, a letter folded in four, an old phone with a cracked screen, and then a school ID. It wasn't Camila's. It was for a girl named Bianca, a girl who'd gone to our school years ago, a girl we'd heard about once, in whispers, a transfer who left suddenly, mid-semester, and never came back. Camila picked it up slowly. Her lips moved like she was trying to speak, but no words came out. That's when the door creaked, not fully open. Just enough for us to see the shadow in the hallway. We both froze. The box was still spilled open between us, the photos scattered like a trap. We didn't hear footsteps, just silence, heavy, pressing, like the air itself was watching. Camila? His voice came through the door, soft. Too soft. You girls okay? She kicked the box under the bed in a single motion, stood up too fast, and opened the door with a smile that almost looked real. Double quotes. Yeah, just cleaning. Want us to make you coffee? He paused, looked past her. Right, at me. I smiled too, because that's what you do when your heart is pounding. And you don't want him to know. His eyes lingered on mine a second too long. Then he smiled. I'll be in the kitchen. Camila closed the door slowly. We didn't speak. We didn't move. Just stared at each other and then at the box. It sat under the bed like a mine waiting to detonate. We should tell someone. I whispered. Camila didn't answer. I don't think she could. Her hands were gripping the edge of the bed, her knuckles white, and in her eyes I saw something I hadn't seen before. Not just fear. Not confusion. Recognition. She knew. Maybe not all of it. Maybe not what happened with Bianca or what the photos meant. But something inside her clicked. Like she had been trying to ignore the puzzle pieces for years. And now they were all spilling onto the floor. She didn't say a word. She just grabbed the box and stuffed everything back inside. With a strange calmness, she taped it shut again, slid it to the back of the closet behind the blankets, as if putting it out of sight would erase what we'd seen. We never saw this, she said, her voice flat. Okay, I wanted to argue. I wanted to scream. But I didn't, because deep down I understood what she was doing. She was protecting herself. Denial was the only armor she had left. So I nodded. And we went downstairs like nothing had happened. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because of the photos or the box, or even the man who smiled too easily. I didn't sleep because I saw the truth in my best friend's face, and I knew she was going to break. It was just a matter of time. Camila didn't bring up the box the next day. Not at lunch, not during math. Not even when we were alone behind the gym, where we used to vent about our teachers or talk about our dreams in quiet whispers. But something had changed in her. She was quieter than usual, less sharp, less sarcastic. Her laughter, when it came, felt forced. And when she hugged me goodbye that afternoon, she held on longer than she ever had before. I thought maybe she was trying to forget. Maybe pretending nothing happened was her way of coping. But I was wrong. She hadn't forgotten. She was planning. 2 days later, our history teacher gave us a new project. Interview someone in your family and learn something about your past you didn't know. Most of us rolled our eyes. Camila just stared down at her paper, not moving. After class, I caught up to her. Are you okay? I asked. She hesitated. Then she looked at me, not with fear, but with something else. Resolve. I'm going to ask my mom about Bianca, she said. I froze. Camila, she has to know something, she continued. She has to? You don't just hide a box like that unless you're hiding from the truth. I tried to stop her. I told her maybe it wasn't the right time. Maybe there were safer ways. But she shook her head. I just need to hear what she says. That'll be enough. That night, I didn't hear from her. No text, no calls, nothing. The silence felt like a countdown. The next morning, she came to school late. Her eyes were swollen like she hadn't slept. She sat next to me in homeroom, took a deep breath, and said, "She told me never to say that name again." I didn't know what to say. She got angry, Camila continued, her voice shaking but controlled. Really angry. Said Bianca was a troubled girl who tried to destroy your family. That she made up lies about people she barely knew. That the school had to get involved. Then her voice cracked. And then she said, I hope you're not becoming like her. I reached out to grab her hand, but she pulled away. She knows something. She's protecting him. There was something else in her voice now. Something new. Anger. We sat in silence for the rest of the period. I watched her scribble words into her notebook, like she was trying to trap every memory, every reaction, every red flag she'd ignored. I saw her draw a small square in the corner of the page box. Then she drew lines radiating out of it, like cracks. That was the moment I knew she wasn't just trying to understand anymore. She was preparing to expose it. Later that week, she asked me to help her look up Bianca online. We tried social media, alumni groups, even old yearbooks. Nothing. It was like Bianca had been erased. But Camila didn't give up. If no one remembers her, she whispered, then I'll be the one who does. Then she asked me the question. I never thought I'd hear from her. Do you think my dad ever did something to me and I just don't remember? I didn't answer because how do you answer that? How do you tell your best friend that the man who kissed her forehead every night, who drove her to school, who laughed at her jokes and smiled in every family photo, might also be the reason a girl disappeared? I wanted to lie. I wanted to say no. But I didn't. I just sat there holding her hand this time, not letting go. And that's when she made the decision. She wasn't going to stay quiet. Not anymore. Camila didn't sleep the night she asked me that question. I could tell by her face the next morning, pale, tense, with those hollow shadows under her eyes that no makeup could cover. Her mom had dropped her off like nothing was wrong. Like the world wasn't burning around them, but Camila wasn't pretending anymore. She had printed out pages, quotes from old school newsletters, articles we had dug up on archive forums, a blurry scan of a yearbook photo that might have been Bianca in the back row. Each page was marked, highlighted, annotated with her tight handwriting. She brought them to the one adult left in school she thought might listen. Miss Herrera, the school counselor. I waited outside her office during lunch, stomach twisting. I knew this wasn't going to be a regular meeting. Camila was shaking when she went in, but when the door shut, her voice was steady. I couldn't hear the words, only the rhythm of them, slow, deliberate, like a fuse burning towards something dangerous. 30 minutes passed, then 40. When the door finally opened, Camila stepped out with tear tracks on her cheeks, but her jaw was clenched like stone. Ms. Herrera didn't follow her. Not right away. She stayed behind, staring down at the papers in her hand. Camila grabbed my wrist and pulled me outside. She believes me, she said. I blinked. She what? She knew Bianca, Camila whispered, almost like she didn't believe it herself. She was here. She remembers what happened. Said there were rumors, things the school tried to bury. And then, softer, she said she was scared to ask questions back then, that she regrets it. We sat on the edge of the basketball court while Camila recounted every word. How Ms. Herrera admitted the school had quietly moved Bianca to a different district after a disciplinary issue. How Bianca had tried to report something, but no one followed up. How the story disappeared beneath a pile of paperwork and hush-hush. Conversations between the principal and Camila's parents. She asked me if I felt safe at home. Camila said. I didn't answer. That silence said enough. The next day, Ms. Herrera made a call. To the principal. To child services. And then to Bianca. She had found her. She wouldn't tell Camila where she was yet, only that she had agreed to talk. Camila sat in that guidance office again the next morning, palms sweating, heart racing, holding the phone as if it might explode in her hand. I wasn't there for the call. She made it alone, but when she came back, she was different. She didn't cry. She didn't shake. She just said, she remembers me. She remembers my house. She remembers him. There was a long pause, and she said she tried to warn people that my mom shut her down. We both stared ahead at the lockers and the chatter and the laughter in the halls that suddenly felt distant and unreal. She told me I was the only person she ever trusted enough to try again. Later that day, Camila's mother showed up at school. She didn't smile when she walked in. She didn't say hello. She stormed into the office like someone trying to snuff out a fire before it spread. I saw them through the glass, Camila standing tall, Miss Herrera between them, and her mother's eyes flashing with something between fear and fury. The office door slammed. I don't know what was said behind it, but Camila came out looking tired. And victorious. She didn't go home that night. Her aunt picked her up. She stayed somewhere safe. And suddenly, the girl who had been taught to stay quiet was becoming impossible to ignore. The first time I heard Bianca's voice, it didn't sound like a ghost. It sounded like someone who had been buried alive and was still clawing for air. Camila let me listen to the recording. It wasn't secret or stolen. Bianca had agreed to speak with Ms. Herrera again, but only if someone else heard it too. Someone who could help carry what she had held alone for years. Her voice cracked when she said Camila's name. There was a pause before she added, I didn't think I'd ever say that name out loud again. She remembered everything. The house, the smell of bleach, the silence after midnight, the way the locks had been changed on her bedroom door. And she remembered Camila young, confused, always trying to please. She described her not as a little sister, but as a shadow. Someone who followed her not out of fear, but loyalty. He used to wait until Camila was asleep, Bianca said. Or, he thought she was asleep. That one sentence changed everything. Bianca had never testified. No one had ever given her the space or safety to. She had told Camila's mother what was happening, and instead of protection, she was met with banishment. Her bags were packed the next day. The school was informed of a disciplinary expulsion. The records were sealed. And the man who hurt her stayed behind, stayed with Camila. That night, after hearing the full recording, Camila didn't cry. She didn't panic. She started writing. Pages and pages of memories, times that hadn't made sense as a child, but now burned with clarity. The night Bianca disappeared. The years of unexplained tension. Her father's sudden mood swings. The bruises, he said, came from falling. She filled entire notebooks. Names, dates, details, things a child wouldn't think to question, but a survivor couldn't forget. We printed it all. Miss Herrera helped us organize it. It was no longer just a list of accusations. It was a testimony. And Camila was ready to speak it out loud. When Child Protective Services came back for a second interview, Camila didn't hold back. She told them about the control, the punishments, the bruises, about how her mother minimized everything, how her father had raged when she mentioned Bianca's name. She even handed them a flash drive with Bianca's voice and her own. The case opened officially 2 days later. That same week, Camila's father stopped showing up at the house. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful, it was heavy, like the whole world was holding its breath. Camila stayed with her aunt permanently. Her mom tried calling once, but Camila didn't pick up. The last thing her mother had said in that guidance office was, "Do you have any idea what you're doing to this family?" Camila's answer was simple. "I'm saving what's left of it." Bianca and Camila spoke on the phone again, this time without middlemen. It lasted hours. I didn't hear that call, but when Camila got off, she said something I'll never forget. She still has nightmares. But she said last night, it was the first time she dreamt of our house and didn't feel afraid. She said it was me, that I changed the ending. At school, whispers started spreading. Some kids called Camila brave. Others were too scared to get involved. But she didn't flinch. She walked through the halls like someone who had nothing left to fear. Not because the danger was gone, but because the truth had finally broken through the silence. And then on a rainy Monday morning, Bianca came back. She didn't arrive in secret. She walked through the front door of the school and signed in as a visitor. She wore a denim jacket, hair pulled back, eyes cautious but focused. When she stepped into the counselor's office, I saw Camila freeze. For 1 second, she looked like the little girl who used to follow her sister through the halls. Then she stood and hugged her. It was the kind of hug that doesn't ask questions, doesn't say sorry, doesn't need words, just two people broken in the same places, choosing to heal together. That day wasn't the end. It wasn't justice, but it was the beginning of something louder than fear. And Camila? She was no longer the girl who tiptoed around closed doors. She was the one opening them. Camila didn't expect her mother to show up that day. Not after everything. Not after the investigation had reopened. Not after she had moved in with her aunt permanently. Not after Bianca's visit had already made headlines in the school community. But mothers have their own timing. And this one arrived just when the dust had started to settle. She came during lunch period, walking through the school gates like someone chasing an illusion, clutching a tote bag like it held all her regrets. I was there when Camila looked up from her sandwich and froze. Their eyes met across the courtyard. For a moment, the world blurred. I saw Camila's shoulders stiffen, like her muscles remembered every time they'd been trained to stay small. in her mother's presence, but then she stood, not to run, not to hide. She stood because she was tired of sitting down in her own story. "What are you doing here?" she asked, calm and sharp as glass. Her mother hesitated. "I just want to talk." Camila didn't move. "You had 15 years to talk." Silence fell. A few students nearby stopped eating. You could feel the attention shift, not with curiosity, but tension. They weren't witnessing drama. They were witnessing damage. Her mother spoke again. "You don't understand what it was like for me. I had to choose." "You didn't have to choose him," Camila said, louder now. "You just had to believe me." And there it was. The roar dot, it wasn't shouted. It wasn't theatrical. But it echoed across the courtyard in a way no scream could. Because every girl who'd ever been told to keep the family together felt it in her chest. "You let him stay," Camila continued, "even after Bianca begged you to listen. You let him mock me, punish me, isolate me. You let me erase her, and you tried to erase me too." "I was scared," her mother whispered, "and I was a child." Those words hit like thunder. Her mother's eyes shimmered, but no tears came. Maybe she had none left. Or maybe she didn't think she was allowed to cry in front of the daughter. She failed to protect. Camila didn't ask her to leave. She didn't call security. She didn't cause a scene. But she turned away and returned to her seat. That was her answer. Her mother stood there for a while longer, unsure of what she had hoped for. Forgiveness? Redemption? A hug? She left without any of those things. Left the same way she had left. Camila years ago quietly, without realizing the damage until it was too late. That afternoon, Camila met with Ms. Herrera, not for a breakdown, but to volunteer for the peer support program. "I want to help girls like Bianca," she said. "Girls like me who weren't believed." Her name was submitted to speak at the upcoming school panel on safe reporting and mental health awareness. The principal approved it without hesitation. Meanwhile, news had reached the district board. Bianca's case had been reopened. Camila's father was now the subject of a formal legal review, and Bianca had been offered counseling, legal support, and a public apology by the school board, but Camila didn't need the apology. She didn't even need the school's recognition. She needed the silence to end. And that's what she had finally achieved, not with fists, not with vengeance, but with voice. A voice that had once been silenced by fear. A voice that now spoke for others. A roar that didn't just echo. It changed the air dot. It wasn't the kind of assembly anyone expected to matter. One of those mandatory end-of-term events, where most students slouched in their chairs, whispering, waiting for it to be over. The auditorium buzzed with low voices and restless energy. No one knew what was coming, no one but a few faculty members, the counselor, and Camila. She sat in the second row, hands steady in her lap. I sat beside her, silently hoping that whatever courage had carried her this far would not falter now. "Principal," Estevez approached the mic with his usual grave tone. "Before we close out today's program," he said, scanning the audience, "we have one final presentation. A student requested time to speak. We agreed." And just like that, the room fell quiet, not silent out of respect, silent the way a forest goes still before a storm. Camila rose. She didn't rush, didn't smile, didn't carry any papers. She walked like someone who had walked this path before. Only now she was doing it out loud. She stood at the microphone, looked at the room, at the boys who once teased her in the halls, at the girls who had believed the wrong story, at the teachers who never asked the right questions. And then she began. "My name is Camila," she said, her voice calm, but not soft. "Most of you know me as the quiet one, the girl who eats lunch in the library, the one who missed a month of school last spring." A few heads nodded. A few eyes shifted awkwardly. "I'm not here to talk about gossip," she continued. "I'm here to talk about truth. Not because it's comfortable, but because silence is more dangerous than pain." A murmur rippled through the room. "You've heard rumors," she said, "about me, about my friend, about why I left. Some of them were lies, some were guesses. None were complete." She paused, took a breath. "My best friend, Bianca, tried to end her own life in the room right next to mine. I didn't know until it was almost too late, because the man who hurt her was the same man who sat at my dinner table, who called himself Dad, who told me I was nothing without his rules." Now the auditorium really went still. I was told not to speak, not to ruin his name, not to shame my family. But silence doesn't protect anyone. It just protects abusers. A teacher near the back wiped her eyes. Camila went on. Not dramatic, not angry. Just brutally clear. My mother tried to move us away when she realized I knew, but I stayed. I stayed to speak. I stayed so Bianca wouldn't be the only one who suffered in silence. I stayed because I don't want another girl miss school to think her pain has to stay hidden to be real. She opened her hand and held up a folded piece of notebook paper. This is Bianca's letter. She gave me permission to share it because even though she's still healing, she wants her truth to be heard too. And then she read it, a letter written in slanted, careful handwriting. A letter that spoke about fear, guilt, confusion, about how she thought no one would believe her, about the night she almost disappeared forever, about the hope that returned when Camila showed up, not with answers, but with belief. By the time Camila folded the paper again, the auditorium was changed. Some students were crying. Others stared straight ahead, stunned. Even the faculty looked different, some with shame, some with admiration. No one laughed. No one rolled their eyes. Camila stepped back from the mic and said one last thing. If you see something, say something. If someone tells you they're hurting, listen. And if you're hurting, please don't let silence be your shield. We're not alone. Not anymore. She walked back to her seat. The applause didn't come immediately. It wasn't the polite clapping of obligation. It was the kind that builds like a wave, hesitant at first, then undeniable, then loud enough to shake walls. Cam. ILA didn't cry. But I did that day. She didn't just speak. She turned her pain into power. She didn't just reclaim her story. She gave others permission to start telling theirs. And from that moment on, the quiet girl in the second row wasn't just Camila. She was a force. Bianca stepped onto campus 3 weeks later. She didn't make an announcement. There was no dramatic entrance, no spotlight, but everyone noticed. Her hair was shorter now, like she had cut away everything that once made her feel trapped. She wore oversized headphones, but the cord wasn't plugged into anything, just silence. A barrier she controlled. People stared. Some whispered. A few offered cautious smiles, but most didn't know what to say. Because how do you greet someone who came back from the edge? She walked slowly, scanning faces, navigating the halls like a ghost returning to a world that had already moved on. But the world hadn't moved on. Not really. It had just frozen, waiting for her to reappear so it could decide how to react. And when they saw her, they didn't see the same Bianca who once followed behind Camila, laughing, quietly, always on the edges of conversations. They saw someone different now. Someone who had been to a place they couldn't imagine and survived it. Camila met her outside the library. They didn't say much, just hugged. And it wasn't the soft, polite kind of hug. It was the kind that held grief, gratitude, and a thousand words left unsaid. The administration had arranged a flexible schedule for Bianca half-days, private counseling, a designated safe room if she ever felt overwhelmed. They had learned something, finally, not from training, but from the cost of ignoring pain for too long. That school wasn't the same. The classroom where the essay incident happened had been reassigned. Jason's photo had quietly been removed from the community bulletin board. He had once been listed as a guest speaker for a successful parenting week. No one mentioned why he wasn't coming back. Some students tried to avoid eye contact with Bianca. Guilt in their posture, because before everything broke, many of them laughed at the jokes Jason made. Some of them had even liked the way he mocked Camila's essays, assuming it was all harmless. Others tried to make small talk, pretending things were fine. Bianca smiled politely but never lingered. She had grown too tired to pretend for other people's comfort. One day in the cafeteria, a girl named Lexi, someone who used to sit with Bianca, stood up when she entered. "Hey," she said, loud enough for people to hear. "I'm glad you're here." It was awkward, but honest. A few others murmured the same. Not everyone, but enough. Camila squeezed Bianca's hand under the table. That simple gesture reminded them both. Healing wasn't about forgetting, it was about remembering the right things. Later that week, Principal Estevez called Bianca into his office. He offered her a spot on the student mental health advisory panel. "You don't have to say yes," he said, "but if you ever want your voice to shape how we do things now, there's a seat for you." Bianca didn't answer right away. She just looked at the framed certificate on his wall, the one praising his commitment to student well-being. It felt ironic, but at least he was trying now. That night, Bianca and Camila walked home together. The air was cold. The wind carried the sounds of distant traffic, muffled and irrelevant. Camila turned to her and said, "You were brave to come back." Bianca replied, "You made it safe to come back." It wasn't just about one speech, or one friend, or even one school. It was about truth, a quiet, relentless truth that had refused to stay buried. And now, every step Bianca took down those hallways reminded everyone of what it meant to survive, to speak, and to return on your own terms. She had once been silenced. Now, even her silence spoke louder than most people's words. It didn't happen overnight. Real change never does. But it started with two girls sitting side by side in a school cafeteria that once felt like a battleground. They didn't speak loudly. They didn't carry banners or wear shirts with slogans. What they carried instead was memory and truth and scars that no one could keep hidden anymore. Bianca and Camila didn't ask to become symbols, but in the silence left by the chaos, they became something undeniable. After Bianca joined the Student Mental Health Advisory Board, things began to shift, quietly, subtly, but with weight. A suggestion here, a policy revision there. New protocols were discussed. Anonymous complaint systems, teacher training focused on trauma, more transparency around disciplinary action. It wasn't perfect, but it was different, and it was enough to start. Students who once sat in silence began to speak. Some came to Bianca in whispers, sharing things they never dared to say out loud. A boy in the music room confessed that he hadn't seen his real mother in 3 years. A girl from the track team admitted she often cried behind the bleachers. Even teachers began to soften. Mrs. Grant, the strict literature professor who once punished Bianca for being late, started checking in after class, asking how she was sleeping, how things were at home. Because now people knew what could happen. When no one asked, CAM, ILA too, found a new voice, not the fiery kind that demanded revenge, but the steady kind that builds bridges. She joined Bianca at board meetings, offered her own experiences, defended classmates others ignored. The same school that once dismissed her essay now used it as a training example for faculty. They laughed about that sometimes. The irony of it, how Jason tried to erase their voices, and in doing so, only amplified them. Jason's family moved away quietly. No announcements, no goodbyes. His mother left a note on her classroom door that read simply, "Thank you." Some said she never knew. Others said she knew too much. But she was gone, and no one missed her. Bianca's mother, once blinded by guilt and fear, began therapy. It wasn't a fairy tale. Bianca didn't forgive her overnight, but there were dinners again, apologies, attempts. Sometimes that was enough. Bianca's father, now legally recognized as her sole guardian, attended every meeting, every performance, every moment that mattered. And when he couldn't be there, Camila's family stepped in. Because love, they learned, doesn't come with bloodlines. It comes with presence and choice. Senior year approached, and with it, graduation. Bianca was nominated for valedictorian, not just for her grades, but for the strength she had become. Camila helped her write the speech. On the day of the ceremony, Bianca stood at the podium and looked out at the faces before her. Some had hurt her, some had helped her. Most had simply watched, but now they were all part of the story. "My name is Bianca," she said. "And I was once told that what happened to me didn't matter, that it wasn't real, that it was too complicated to explain. But I'm here, and I'm still explaining it because girls like me, quiet, scared, invisible, don't disappear. We grow, we return, we fight back." The crowd didn't erupt into wild cheers. They sat quietly listening. And in that quiet, Bianca heard something she never thought she'd feel again. Peace. After the ceremony, Bianca and Camila took a photo together. Just the two of them. No filters, no forced smiles, just truth. Later that night, Camila posted it with the caption, "We were just two girls, but we changed everything." And they had, because sometimes it doesn't take a revolution to shake the world. Sometimes it takes one girl who refuses to be erased. And one friend who refuses to let her stand alone. Together, they weren't just survivors. They were the reason the silence broke.